Hello everyone, very good morning and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome back to our discussion on internal security. So in the morning session, we covered the last topic in Assam's insurgency. We finished insurgency in Manipur as well. So now we are heading towards the last part of this chapter. We will talk about insurgency in Mizoram. This is a slightly outdated topic because insurgency in Mizoram came to an end long ago, many decades ago, back in 1987. Mizo insurgency was brought to a complete end. Since then, by and large, Mizoram has been stable, very peaceful, but the state did suffer from a major insurgent movement in the 1960s and 70s. This was the peak period of Mizo insurgency. So here we just have to understand the root cause which triggered the violent armed movement against the Indian state. What threat did it pose and how did India tackle the threat? Because see, this is a success model for India. It was one of the first major insurgencies that India resolved very successfully. We adopted a security approach, we engaged in a dialogue with the extremists, and we focused on the developmental approach as well. So this strategy that India used in Mizoram and as well as in Tripura, these two are success models for India. These are success models with regard to conflict resolution. Because both in Mizoram and Tripura, after the insurgency came to an end, we haven't seen any revival in the last few decades. So let's understand the background to Mizo insurgency first, and then we will discuss how India dealt with the threat. See, the Mizos are a distinct ethnic tribe found in today's Mizoram. But when India became independent and when all these regions in Northeast India were merged with the Indian Union, Mizoram was not a state. It was not a separate state. Initially, it was just a district in the large state of Assam. Please make a note of this point. It's very important. Mizo district was part of the state of Assam. It was not a separate state as such. The current state that you have, Mizoram, it was just one district in the large state of Assam. So here the Mizos, who are a minority ethnic tribe, they felt that the Assamese were discriminating against them. They felt a sense of discrimination and neglect from the majority Assamese, and particularly by the government of Assam. Is that clear? And this concern was quite legitimate. It was quite genuine. Because in the initial years after independence, the state government and even the government of India did not pay much attention to these remote areas. So as a result, there was lack of development, there was backwardness, poverty. So the Mizo people were suffering due to poor governance, poor administration. The Mizos had a grievance that the Assamese in general were trying to dominate over the minority tribe. For example, the Mizo language, which is unique to this community, was not given equal recognition. If you compare with the Assamese language, which was recognized as the official language of the state, Mizo language was not given any such recognition. Right? In fact, Assamese was imposed on the Mizos as well. So Mizos saw this as outside interference, outside imposition, as domination and discrimination by the Assamese. As they were politically dominant in the government of Assam, this essentially became another inter-ethnic issue. right? The Mizos felt a sense of discrimination, oppression from the Assamese, and there was this sense that the government also was neglecting them, both the state government and the center. These feelings got aggravated when Mizo district suffered from a deadly disaster. In late 1950s, there was a deadly famine that hit the region that led to widespread hunger and even a number of deaths due to food shortage in Mizoram. In fact, there's a very interesting story behind this. This famine that hit the Mizo area, the Mizo district, it was a result of a season called the Motam season. The term Motam, which is a local term, right? It refers to the cyclical flowering of the bamboo. I'm sure you know that in Northeast India, there is a very good presence of the bamboo trees. The bamboo plays a big role in the economy of Northeast India as well. So the bamboo flowers in a cyclical manner, and the flowering season is usually once in 48 years. It's a natural ecological phenomena. This cyclical flowering season of the bamboo is called the Motam season. Now you might be wondering, how is this related to a famine? How can this cause a famine? Let me explain. When the bamboo flowers simultaneously, right, eventually all the seeds will drop to the ground. So when there is a large availability of seeds on the ground, this is ready food for various animals. So the rodent population exploded in Mizo district due to the wide availability of bamboo seeds that were falling to the ground following the flowering season. Following the Motam season, the large availability of seeds on the ground became easy, readily available food for various animals, including pests such as rats and rodents. So what do? They consume all the seeds. So as there is easy food available, automatically the population will explode, causing a major pest infestation. And once all the seeds are consumed, by then the population would have exponentially increased. And after the seeds are exhausted, right, what will these rats and rodents do? Where will they find food? Obviously, they will target the agricultural crops, the standing crops. They will target the warehouses, the food granaries where the food grains are stored. So because of this massive rat and rodent infestation, right, the standing crops were destroyed and even the stored food grains were destroyed by the rats and rodents. So within few months, the Mizo district was staring at a massive famine. It started in 1959. This led to widespread hunger, right? It led to malnutrition and it created the vicious cycle of poverty, right? It created a lot of health related issues as well. And many people lost their lives during this famine. So during this disaster, the Mizos felt that the state and the central government didn't even come to their assistance. The Mizos had a perception that the government of Assam didn't do much to help the Mizos during this crisis. They also blamed the government of India for neglecting the region, for forgetting about the region, and for not doing enough during this time of disaster. So this built up resentment and anger amongst the Mizos. On one hand, they already felt that they were being discriminated, right? They felt their language, the Mizo language, was not given equal recognition and status. And now, the poor handling of this disaster by the state government and the center further added to this resentment and anger. So the Mizo people, they united to form an organization called Mizo Union, which provided the relief for the affected people. The Mizo people organized their own relief, right? Some of the Mizo leaders came together under the leadership of Pu Lal Denga. Under the leadership of Lal Denga, the Mizo Union organized the relief efforts supplied food wherever possible, and tried to provide assistance to the affected Mizo families. So because of this relief work done by Mizo Union, the organization became very popular, and quickly it became the political representative of the Mizo community. It became the political representative that represented the interests, the demands, the concerns of the Mizo people. And this Mizo Union transformed itself into the Mizo National Front when Pu Lal Denga gave a call for a secessionist movement against India. Lal Denga firmly believed that Mizos had no future if they were part of India. Given the past experience, right? In fact, if you go back to the partition period, many Mizos had opposed the merger with India as well. So there was a sense that the merger with India was also forceful. Then they felt discriminated by the Assamese when they didn't get equal treatment and recognition, especially for their culture and language. And the mistreatment during the disaster, the mishandling of the whole disaster by the governments. This had built up the anger, the frustration. And under Lal Denga, a call was given to launch an insurgent war against India, to declare a secessionist movement and fight for the independence of the Mizo land. Their goal was to break the Mizo district from Assam and India and form an independent nation. So essentially, it was a separatist movement led by Lal Denga. So Lal Denga established the MNF, the Mizo National Front, which had its own armed organization called the Mizo National Army. It had a separate armed unit called the Mizo National Army, and Mizo National Front became the separatist political movement, and the MNA would carry out the insurgent attack against the Indian forces. So this war escalated very quickly. And the goal of Lal Denga was to liberate these areas to form a separate country and to turn the Mizo land into a sovereign Christian nation. As I told you earlier, today in the morning, you can again see a religious angle, right, which is quite unique because these insurgent movements are essentially left-wing extremist movements. But some of them in Northeast India have had a religious inclination, and MNF was one such insurgent outfit. So MNF would be like the political face of the separatist movement, but Mizo National Army was the armed organization leading the insurgent war. So in early 1960s, the MNF established a very strong base in East Pakistan. If you guys remember, yesterday I had discussed how the Naga insurgents also had taken shelter in East Pakistan, the Naga National Council. So Naga insurgents were already hosted by Pakistan. Now the Mizo insurgents were also hosted in East Pakistan. So Pakistan was directly meddling and interfering in the northeast to create security challenges for India. Lal Denga shifted base to East Pakistan to escape from the Indian security forces. From here, he would run the insurgent operations by establishing a safe haven where Pakistan would provide the funds, weapons, and even training to these Mizo insurgents. So very quickly, the threat escalated, and by mid-1960s, the MNF had become a formidable armed organization. Due to Pakistani state support, right? This became a serious security challenge for India. It became a national security challenge. There was a clear threat to our sovereignty and integrity. So at this point, India extended AFSPA. The area was declared as a disturbed area under the Assam Disturbed Areas Act. And once it was declared a disturbed area, AFSPA was extended, giving special powers to the Indian Army and as well as to the Assam Rifles to launch targeted counterinsurgency operations against the MNF. So this has been a standard model. Wherever insurgency has broken out in the northeast, Immediately, the area is declared as a disturbed area, and ASPA is implemented. And under these special powers, counterinsurgency operations are launched. The Indian Army takes the lead with the backing of Assam Rifles in these operations. But given that the threat was very serious and there was cross-border support for MNF, the then Indira Gandhi government took a very controversial decision in 1966. Since intelligence inputs indicated a very serious threat for India's integrity and sovereignty by the Mizo insurgents, India decided to escalate the security operations, and the then Indira Gandhi government authorized airstrikes to be conducted in Mizoram, particularly in Aizawl, the capital of Mizoram today. Now, this is the first and only time when the Indian Air Force was used to bomb our own territory. At that time, when the operation took place, it was a classified operation. It was a covert operation. For many days, the rest of India didn't know about the airstrikes. The government kept it under wraps, and it was only revealed much later. Now, in the last weekend class, we had discussed why we don't use armed forces usually to deal with internal conflicts, right? With regard to Naxalism, I told you that governments have taken a conscious decision to not use armed forces against Naxals because it's largely a domestic threat, right? If army, air force are used, they will bring heavy weaponry, they will use heavy force, which could lead to a lot of killings and human right violations. It could lead to collateral damage where civilians are killed in large numbers. But only in the border areas, like in Northeast India and Jammu and Kashmir, only Indian Army is used for ground operations, for counterinsurgency operations. But we had never ever used Indian Air Force. After this, we have never used Indian Air Force on Indian territory itself to target Indian citizens. This was the first and only time in the history of independent India that Indian Air Force was used to conduct airstrikes on Indian territory, which led to the killing of several insurgents. But of course, the price was paid by civilians as well. That is why this was a controversial airstrike. Is that clear? Because back then, Indian Air Force did not have guided ammunition. It did not have guided bombs, right? This would essentially be a random airstrike, that too in a populated area like Aizawl and in other important locations. The target, the goal was to hit insurgent camps based on intelligence inputs. But these airstrikes could go wrong. You might hit civilian targets. The nearby buildings could also be affected. Thus, the collateral damage would be very high in such an airstrike. So these airstrikes, which went on for a couple of days, resulted in large-scale damage in Mizoram, killing many civilians as well. So this operation has been very controversial. The government felt it was necessary at that point because MNF was indeed posing a major threat because it had taken shelter in Pakistan, in East Pakistan. It was getting direct support, right? Not just funds, but even weapons and training, military-grade training. So the Indira Gandhi government decided to neutralize the threat as soon as possible, and it was seen as justified to use the Indian Air Force on our own territory against our own people. But others have criticized it, saying that using armed forces in such situations could lead to a lot of collateral damage and human rights violations. I'm stressing on this because recently Prime Minister Modi, when he was facing a lot of criticism for the mishandling of the situation in Manipur, he brought up this airstrike under the Indira Gandhi government. He said previous governments also had mishandled the situation in the Northeast. He quoted this example of how Indira Gandhi had ordered an airstrike in Mizoram. Right? So it was widely covered in newspapers when the Manipur crisis was going on and the Prime Minister was not speaking about it. Right? So that's another reason why you should know about this incident. So following the security operations by India, we weakened the Mizo outfit. The MNF was substantially weakened, and we even tried improving our border security to prevent the cross-border support, to contain the cross-border support. But the biggest breakthrough for India came in 1971. when we liberated East Pakistan. That is, when we liberated Bangladesh from Pakistan. This automatically took care of the problem, right? Throughout 1960s, Indian forces had kept up the pressure. We had weakened MNF. But once Bangladesh was liberated, it lost the critical bases in East Pakistan. It lost the state support. So now it was easy for India to target the MNF and force the MNF to surrender. So eventually, the MNF agreed for talks with India. And parallelly, we started focusing on development of Mizoram as well. We started addressing the political demands of the people of Mizoram. So through such a calculated response and through such a multi-step response, India contained this crisis within few years, and by 1987 we had struck a peace deal which officially brought the insurgency to an end. Is that clear? The insurgency ended in 1986 when MNF formally surrendered and the Mizo Peace Accord was signed, according to which Mizoram was granted statehood in 1987. This was one of the key promises made as part of the Mizo Peace Accord. So Mizoram had been carved out of Assam. It was already made a union territory for a short period. This was done to satisfy the political demand of the Mizos. Now it was given complete statehood as part of the Mizo Peace Accord. Right? Now the Mizo people could look after their own administration. Right? The Mizo district had now become a full state, a full-fledged state. And MNF was allowed to enter mainstream politics as part of the deal. The MNF surrendered, Lal Denga surrendered, right? They surrendered all the weapons as well. And they were allowed to contest elections, enter mainstream politics. And surprisingly, MNF won multiple elections and formed the state government in Mizoram for many terms. Even in the recent elections which took place in Mizoram, MNF was expected to give a close fight, but it lost in some of the few last rounds, right? But Lal Denga would become the chief minister as well of Mizoram. So at one time, a wanted terrorist and insurgent, right, would go on to contest elections, restoring faith in democracy and elections. And that is how India successfully brought this insurgency to an end. So this was a mixed strategy, a combined strategy. There was very effective security response. The counter-insurgency operations were doing well. The airstrikes played a role, despite being controversial. Border security had been stepped up. Intelligence gathering was crucial. IB and later RAW, they played a very important role in bringing down the MNF. Is that clear? RAW's involvement in East Pakistan gave India the edge to target these insurgent groups after Bangladesh was liberated. Right? So intelligence agencies played a big role. Parallelly, we started focusing on development of the region, provided better administration, better governance. And along with that, we met the aspirations of the people of Mizoram. Right? Statehood was promised and it was delivered in 1987 as promised under the Mizo Peace Accord. It was this combined strategy that allowed us to resolve the conflict in a peaceful manner, and following this, Mizoram has by and large become peaceful. Today, Mizoram doesn't suffer from any major insurgency, but organized crime remains a concern today. If you ask me what's the security concern you have in Mizoram, one major concern is organized crime. There are few armed organizations that operate along the Myanmar border. These are not insurgent groups, but they are criminal groups that possess weapons. They are involved primarily in drugs trafficking and even in arms trafficking. Because, see, don't forget, Mizos are connected with the Chins on the other side of the border in Myanmar. Just like Kuki, Zomis are connected, Mizos and Chins are connected ethnically. They come from the same ethnic lineage. They have familial cultural links, very historical links. So Mizos and Chins are connected to each other, and in Myanmar, Chins have their own insurgency going on against the Myanmar military, right? So some of the Mizos, they cross over the border and get involved in criminal activities in the Golden Triangle, like drug trafficking, wildlife trafficking, even human trafficking and arms trafficking is quite rampant here. So there are few armed organizations which are basically criminal cartels posing a threat in the border areas. Recently, a few years ago, some of these armed organizations, they were threatening the Kaladan project between India and Myanmar. Kaladan is a very important connectivity project that we are pursuing under Look East Act East policy. We are trying to create a sea route, which we have already established between the east coast of India and the Sitwe port in Myanmar. India has developed the Sitwe port in Myanmar, which is a strategic port. From there, the goods can be supplied through Kaladan River, through an inland navigation route. And finally, we are building a road that will connect Myanmar with Mizoram, right? So this connectivity will give us alternate access to Northeast India. It will improve the connectivity of Northeast India with Myanmar. But this project has been delayed for a very long time due to various reasons. And one of the reasons is the threat by the armed groups and criminal groups near the Mizo-Myanmar border. So a few years ago, between 2018-2019, India conducted a joint operation with Myanmar's army to target these groups called Operation Sunrise 1 and Operation Sunrise 2. These were two major military operations conducted by the Indian Army near the border with support from Myanmar's army. It was a joint operation of the Indian Army and Myanmar army. From both the sides, they targeted some of the armed groups operating here, which were threatening the Kaladan project. Is that clear? So that concern remains. The prevalence of organized crime, the presence of armed groups is a concern. And the new concern is the flow of Chin refugees into Mizoram. Just like the Zomi refugees have entered Manipur to take support from Kukis, Chin refugees have flowed into Mizoram because of the crisis in Myanmar to take shelter with the help of Mizos. Even few Myanmar government officials and army officials are fleeing the conflict. Because recently you might have read in newspapers that the rebel groups are making a lot of progress. A few rebel organizations have formed a coalition called the Three Brotherhood Alliance in Myanmar, and they are effectively targeting the Myanmar military, and Myanmar's army has suffered major setbacks along the Chinese border and also along the Indian border. Several territories have been captured by the rebel groups that are part of the Three Brotherhood Alliance. They have captured a huge territory near the Chinese border towards the northern part of Myanmar. They have captured very important locations along the Indian border near Mizoram and Manipur. So a number of Myanmar's officials, including military officials and soldiers, have fled into India to escape the war, and they have come into India as refugees. So the refugee problem could create new border challenges for us. This could enable criminals and insurgents to infiltrate as well, right? Through the refugee route, criminals and insurgents might easily move across the border, increasing the criminal activities and even maybe terrorist insurgent activities. So that remains a concern. But apart from that, Mizoram is very stable. And ever since the crisis was resolved in 1986-87, Mizoram became a success story for India. All right, so these are the points you have to remember, the history and the current concerns that we have. That's why I told you it's a small topic. Next, let's talk about insurgency in Tripura, the last insurgency from Northeast India. Let's understand, why did insurgency start in Tripura? What were the concerns here, right? How did the movement grow and how did India tackle the threat? Because this is another successful model. Even in Tripura, we have resolved the insurgency and Tripura today is very peaceful and stable. Tripura has no insurgency today, right? So let's understand this and then we can close this chapter. See, in Tripura, right, during colonial time, It was the Tripuri kingdom. So here the dominant ethnic group, the ethnic tribal group, are the Tripuris. Tripuris are the natives. They are the indigenous tribal community of Tripura, right, who were part of the Tripuri kingdom. Now, post-independence, Tripuris didn't have any such concern with regard to the government. They didn't have any resentment. The merger was not seen as forceful. But the issue developed in 1970s when large-scale illegal migration started from Bangladesh. In fact, it is exactly the same reason as that of Assam, as that of Ulfa's insurgency. Whatever we studied for Ulfa insurgency in Assam, the same will apply here. Because see, Tripura is a border state sharing borders with Bangladesh. Just like Assam, Meghalaya received refugees and illegal migrants from Bangladesh and East Pakistan, similarly, Tripura received refugees and illegal migrants. When it was East Pakistan in 1947 and before 1971, a lot of refugees had come into Tripura. And after Bangladesh was created, a lot of illegal migrants flowed into Tripura as well. So these Bengali migrants who were coming in illegally from across the border, they became a threat to the native Tripuris. Is that clear? So as the migrant population increased, it led to demographic changes in Tripura. The population composition started changing. And especially near the Tripura-Bangladesh border, you have plain areas. It's all plains near the border. Most of it is a plain area. And this is where most of the Tripuris had their settlement. This is where all the commercial activities were concentrated. Now, these plains, which was seen as the homeland of the Tripuris, was being taken over by Bengali illegal migrants. Both Bengali Hindus, Bengali Muslims were taking over these commercial areas and settled areas, and they pushed the Tripuris towards the hills. The Tripuris, they got pushed towards the hills as the demographic composition started changing by mid-70s and early 80s. So this is what created the ground for insurgency in Tripura. The Tripuris saw that every other group in Northeast India had taken up insurgency to get their demands addressed. Be it Assamese, Bodos, Nagas, Mizos, everybody had started their own insurgency. So this had become like a habit, like a pattern. So the Tripuris who resented the government of India and the government of Tripura, they declared a war against India, and insurgent groups were set up. Two major insurgent groups were set up to target the Indian state. They started a separatist war to form a separate country called Tripuri. They wanted the independence. It was basically a movement on nationalist lines. They wanted this ethnic community to have a separate country for themselves so that they can plug these problems and address these issues. So they blamed the Indian government and the state government for failing to prevent illegal migration, for failing to protect the land, rights, and resources of the Tripuris. They saw this as a cultural threat as well. So as a result, socio-ethnic tensions increased, and it even led to clashes between the Tripuris and the Bengalis. So violent clashes had taken place between the illegal migrants and the natives. So triggered by all these events, some of the radical Tripuris, they established two major insurgent groups and declared this war against India. One insurgent group was NLFT, the National Liberation Front of Tripura, and the other major one was ATTF, All Tripura Tiger Force. Now again, the irony, the hypocrisy is that both these groups, they took support across the border in Myanmar and as well as in Bangladesh. Understood? As they were able to source funds, weapons, and other logistics for their operations, They conveniently took shelter in the neighboring countries, and they even tied up with other groups like UNLF, ULFA, NSCN, and KLO. All these groups were connected. They were assisting each other, working with each other. When it came to supply of weapons, especially, right? One group would help the other, even with regard to training, right? One outfit would help the other. So this had become a nexus across Northeast India, and this is how insurgency in Tripura escalated from 1970s. It reached a peak in 1980s. Then finally, we countered the threat by 1990s. These were the 3 decades when the violence was maximum in Tripura, especially after mid 70s. The acts of these insurgents went up. They targeted Indian forces. They targeted the Bengali migrants as well, right? But by 1980s, India mounted a major counter to curb the insurgency in the state. The response was again very similar to what we did in Mizoram. It was a multi-pronged approach. On the security front, obviously, AFSPA was extended. It was declared a disturbed area. AFSPA was implemented, and massive counter-insurgency operations were launched by Indian Army and the Assam Rifles. This played a very big role in weakening both the outfits. Then Intelligence Bureau and even RAW, the intelligence agencies, played a big role in assisting in the counter-insurgency operations. Then parallelly, the government of India tried to promote welfare, and the credit goes to the state government under the Communist Party, the CPI Marxist, the left party which was in power for several terms under a legendary chief minister. Remember, we discussed about CPI Marxist. Don't confuse this with CPI Maoist. CPI Maoists are extremists, they are Naxals. CPI Marxist is a legitimate political party in India, right? It's very popular in Kerala, in West Bengal, and in Tripura. It has won multiple elections, formed multiple state governments. So, under the CPI Marxist, under a legendary chief minister, the state government initiated massive economic and developmental reforms. The core issues of the Tripuris were addressed. Issues related to land, even basic welfare like education, agriculture, healthcare, creation of jobs at the local level, right? These issues were addressed proactively by the state government. The state government played a very big role here with active support from the center. This was crucial in the 1980s and 1990s to pull people away from the influence of these extremists. We even countered the propaganda of these extremists. The intelligence agencies ran a perception management program. Basically, we countered the propaganda of the extremists with counter propaganda, highlighting the achievements of the government, discrediting the insurgents and their doctrine and their violence. This was very successfully done by the intelligence agencies as part of the psychological warfare, as part of information warfare. They worked closely with media organizations to spread the right message, to pull people away from the influence of these extremists. Right? So these combined strategies worked and gave results. And by 1990s, these groups had been weakened and almost decimated. When we conducted Operation Bajrang and Operation Rhino in 1990s, targeting all these groups, many of the groups, they fled to Bhutan. I don't know if you know about this. Several insurgent groups were targeted in 1990s under Operation Bajrang and later under Operation Rhino. These were massive counter-insurgency operations conducted across northeastern states. Multiple northeast insurgent groups were targeted by the army and the Assam Rifles. Since the focus was on Myanmar border and Bangladesh border, many of the insurgents, they fled into Bhutan and took shelter in Bhutan. Because with Bhutan, we have a partially open border, right? So several insurgent groups, including NSCN, NDFB, KLO, ULFA, and ATTF, right? They all ran to Bhutan and took shelter here for a short period. But Bhutan has never given support to Northeast insurgents. Bhutan is a great friend of India. It did not support the insurgents who had entered. They had crossed over the border, set up their camps in the forested areas of Bhutan. The moment the presence of these insurgents was detected, Bhutan coordinated with India. India requested Bhutan to cooperate, and very specific intelligence was generated by IB and RAW, through which a targeted operation was launched by the Indian Army Special Forces, the para commandos. This was called Operation All Clear. It went on for a couple of years in early 2000. It came to an end by 2003, 2004, and we had successfully flushed out all the insurgents hiding in Bhutan with the help of the Royal Bhutanese Army. From Bhutan, Royal Bhutanese Army was giving support, ensuring that the insurgents will not flee and run away. From the Indian side, based on specific intelligence inputs, Indian Army launched targeted operations under Operation All Clear, and by 2003, 2004, we had flushed out all these terrorists and pushed them out from Bhutan back into India. So following these operations, these groups started weakening, and especially ATTF, which was the biggest threat, right? It was almost wiped out. Even NLFT was almost decimated, and there was no need for a peace deal. The insurgents were defeated. The local support did not exist anymore because of better development, better governance, and the counter propaganda. Is that clear? So these insurgents were eliminated, and there was no need for a peace deal. No peace accord was signed. But post 90s, Tripura became very peaceful and stable. But still, AFSPA continued for many years, and finally, it was revoked in 2015. Tripura became the first state in Northeast India to revoke AFSPA. Please make a note of this. The Tripura Legislative Assembly passed a resolution that Tripura is free from insurgency from almost 20 years, from 1995 till 2015. It said that there's no need for AFSPA to continue because the law is controversial, it has led to human rights violations. So accordingly, Tripura was no longer a disturbed area. The disturbed area notification was revoked. Tripura urged the government of India to revoke AFSPA as well, as it was no longer a disturbed area, and accordingly, AFSPA was revoked from Tripura. So Tripura became the first state in Northeast India to fully revoke AFSPA after being implemented. So this is how Tripura saw success against insurgency, and it became a peaceful, stable state. Got it? So this completes my detailed discussion of Northeast insurgency. We have covered all the major topics. Now, at the last, I have provided a summary of the common response, the general response of India to deal with Northeast insurgency. Because what if there is a general question? Instead of a specific question on ULFA, NSCN, or Manipur, Mizoram, what if there is a broad general question asking you how India has responded to the security threats in Northeast India? Can you illustrate how India has tackled Northeast insurgency? Right? These are general questions, broad questions. So there you can use these 5 points, which we have already studied and discussed, and summarize the general response of India to deal with the threats in Northeast India. And for every point, you can give examples, specific examples. So talk about how India has always used proportionate force. We have never used disproportionate force except for one incident, except for the airstrike in Mizoram. This is the only instance where disproportionate force was used. But otherwise, India has always used proportionate force. We have relied on counterinsurgency operations under the special powers of AFSPA. Right? A measured response has been provided by the security forces. And once we weaken the groups through security operations and through better intelligence-led operations, we open talks with these groups and we try to settle the conflict through a peace accord. So you can give examples: Bodo Accord, the Mizo Accord, etc. India is always ready to make structural changes as well, thanks to the flexibility provided in the Indian Constitution. You can mention the autonomy which is given under 6th schedule and under Article 371A and the series of articles that continue. You have 371A, B, C, etc. Right? So these states in Northeast India, especially the ones under the 6th schedule, they get special provisions. Constitutional autonomy is guaranteed. Various executive, legislative, financial, judicial powers are delegated to the autonomous councils. So this flexibility in the Indian Constitution helps address such demands for separatism. We can curb the separatist movements by providing limited autonomy within Indian sovereignty. Right? So that is a major tool that we have used. The Constitution itself provides that tool, that option to deal with such demands. Next, we have, of course, prioritized development in the last 30 odd years. In the last 3 decades, especially since 1990s, as India's economy grew, our resources improved, our economy became stronger, the government has paid special attention to Northeast India. Right? Not just in the last few years, but since 1990s, we have been paying special attention to Northeast India to improve connectivity, create critical infrastructure, create more livelihood opportunities. So governance has improved, welfare has become better, governance and administration has become better. Then even through our foreign policy, through Look East, Act East policy, we have tried to connect the Northeast with the Southeast Asian markets via Myanmar. This is an important foreign policy objective under the Look East, Act East policy. Under this policy, we have tried to improve our ties with Southeast and East Asian countries. Is that clear? So Northeast India can be directly connected to the whole Southeast Asia region because Myanmar is like a bridge that connects India with Southeast Asia. Northeast India is a gateway. It's a gateway to Southeast Asia. So we have taken up many important connectivity projects to link the Northeast with Myanmar and Southeast Asia. For example, you can write Kaladan project. You can also write the IMT trilateral highway project with Myanmar and Thailand. Right? You can give these examples to showcase how India is leveraging foreign policy, diplomacy with these countries to create opportunities for Northeast India. Because through this connectivity, the products from Northeast India can be exported to Southeast Asian markets. Investments can be attracted from Southeast Asian economies to Northeast India, especially countries like Singapore, right? Even Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, which have a strong base in manufacturing, financial services, even in agriculture, food processing. They can bring investments into Northeast India. In fact, we are even working with East Asian powers under this policy, especially Japan. Japan has already become a major partner with India. We have set up something called the Act East India-Japan Forum. A dedicated forum has been set up between India and Japan called Act East India-Japan Forum to drive investments into the Northeast region. Japan provides a lot of concessional loans under its ODA program. All right, Japan has a program called ODA, Official Development Assistance Program, where Japan provides development assistance to developing nations and poor countries. Since many decades, Japan has been providing concessional loans to India to fund many key projects in the country. Today, under Act East India-Japan Forum, it is providing dedicated investments to Northeast India, mainly to create infrastructure. So Japan has given concessional loans to Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, Manipur, Mizoram. So several developmental projects are going on. Power plants are coming up with Japanese funds. Roads are being built. Rural development programs are being implemented. So this is the collective approach of India, the broad approach of India towards tackling Northeast insurgency, right? So if you can include all these points with the examples I'm mentioning, that is more than enough for any such question. All right. So this completes my detailed discussion of Northeast India. See, there are many more topics we can discuss and cover if you want. But see, the point here is to help you prepare for the exam. You don't have to become an expert in Northeast India, right? As far as the exam is concerned, the topics I've covered is enough. It's more than sufficient. Because somewhere we have to draw a line. These subjects are so dynamic and open-ended that there's no end to the syllabus. In fact, you can study insurgency for 1 year. In fact, it's a specialization. It's a course for specialization. Just studying insurgency in India will take almost 1 year. But here we are not, attempting this exam to become experts. It's about gaining sufficient in-depth knowledge to be able to crack the exam, to be able to write the answers. So from that point of view, what we have covered is enough. Don't go beyond this. If you try to do that, you'll make a mistake, you'll waste your time. So stick to the topics we have covered and whatever comes in current affairs, whatever updates come up. This is it. That is all you have to do. So please go through the PYQs. A lot of questions have come from Northeast insurgency. It's all very simple. I don't even have to discuss this, right? I'm giving you the questions and I'm hoping that you will take up answer writing practice. Last weekend, I have given you a lot of inputs on answer writing. I spent, I think, 20-25 minutes in giving you ideas about how to start answer writing. How can you structure answers, right? How can you ensure that you become better at answer writing? This is something I've already covered. So I expect you to take up these questions and start answering them. The questions are very simple, very straightforward. Read carefully, understand what the question is asking, and based on what we have discussed, you can easily write good answers to these questions. All right. So let us look at any doubts, any questions that you have. And after that, we'll start with the smaller topics. We have many chapters that we will go through today. We will take a look at role of media and social media. That is the first topic of discussion. We'll discuss cybersecurity. We'll discuss money laundering and border security and border management. And finally, we'll look at security forces of India. So please let me know if you have any questions, any doubts, because with this, we have completed the big major chapters in Northeast insurgency and of course in internal security. Gaurav says, sir, Japan is also investing in Northeast India. Yes, correct. That's what I mentioned. Japan is a major investor in Northeast India. Hemlata is asking, is East Pakistan now Bangladesh? Yes, obviously. India played a big role in liberating Bangladesh from Pakistan. All right, I see that there are no other questions. Okay, few questions are coming now. Kennedy says Japan is investing in soft loans, correct? Japan provides soft loans. That's what I refer to. I call them concessional loans. Both are same. Concessional loans or soft loans. Basically, they have very low interest rate and a very long repayment period. So it doesn't become a burden on the borrowing country. So Japan provides these concessional soft loans to promote infrastructure projects in many countries. Mitali is asking, does India have good relations with the military junta in Myanmar? Yes. You will study that under international relations. India has very good ties with the military junta. We have very good defense relations also with the military junta. We have given them funds, supplied weapons. We have given them military training. For example, recently, India gifted a submarine to the Myanmar Navy. That is the kind of relations we have with the military junta. We have never criticized Myanmar's military for all the atrocities and human rights violations it has committed. It has staged a couple of military coups. It has targeted minorities. It has targeted various ethnic groups. But never has India criticized the military junta, because we want military junta to be favorable to India. Because the threat for Northeast is very serious. The threat from organized crime, threat from Northeast insurgency, threat from China is very, very serious and credible. So it's important that we are good friends with military junta. And that's exactly what India has done. Abhishek is asking, if Tripura became a stable state, then why autonomous district councils were provided? See, that's because some of the tribal districts, they had genuine backwardness. So to protect their interests, to allow them to look after their own land, to allow them to look after their governance, autonomous councils were set up in Tripura as well. The constitution provided for that flexibility under sixth schedule, and Tripura also was provided a few autonomous district councils. Gaurav is asking, sir, Northeast India has great tourist potential, but government lags in promoting it. You're absolutely right, Gaurav. The reason why we haven't promoted tourism properly in Northeast India is because, one, due to security situation that was there before, then lack of connectivity, lack of facilities, right? But now this is changing. It will change in the coming 10, 20 years. The government will focus more on tourism, not just the center, even the state governments. That will bring a lot of revenue, because Northeast India has pristine beauty. Some of you might have visited, because I've been to some parts in Northeast India. Trust me, it's one of the most exotic places that you can find, especially the natural locations that are there. It's quite amazing. So there is great tourist potential that can be tapped. All that is required is infrastructure creation. You of course need airports, railway links, road connectivity. You need hotel, tourist infrastructure, right? Hospitality industry has to grow. So now the big companies, the big hotel brands and chains are interested. Not just in Assam, right? It was usually the big five-star hotels were all restricted to Assam. Now they're expanding. As things stabilize, as the region becomes more normal, right? Many big private players are looking to expand the tourist infrastructure, and this will drive tourism in the coming years. But of course, it depends on the security situation. That's why the situation in Manipur, situation in Myanmar is not good for India, right? So if you ask me why tourism has not been developed till now, it was mainly because of security situation, poor connectivity, poor infrastructure. We are hoping that this will change going forward, but it all depends on the stability of the region. Vishal is asking, under AFSPA, army takes control of the whole state or only the disturbed area in the state? See, under AFSPA, there is a provision that you can implement AFSPA either for the whole state or only for part of the state. Accordingly, disturbed area is also declared. Like for example, in let's say Nagaland, right? In Nagaland, AFSPA at one point was implemented across the state, across the entire length and breadth of the state. So the Indian Army and the Assam Rifles will have special powers across the whole state of Nagaland, which has been declared as disturbed area, and AFSPA has been implemented. But slowly, as violence declined, AFSPA was revoked from certain parts of Nagaland. We've done the same in Mizoram as well. Across Mizoram, AFSPA is not there. In some districts, it has been revoked. So wherever it is revoked, wherever disturbed area notification is revoked, so in those areas, special powers will not be available. So it depends on the notification, right? It can be for the whole state as well. It can be for a part of the state as well. Diksha is asking, why did Bangladesh support Indian insurgents even after India helped with its liberation? Again, you'll understand this in international relations. I'll tell you that in brief, but you'll understand the details in IR. See, Bangladesh was very grateful to India when India helped in the liberation of Bangladesh. The first government of Bangladesh was formed by Awami League, which fought for the independence. Right? It was led by a legendary leader, the founding father of Bangladesh, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Sheikh Hasina. India was very good friends with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. We had given full support to his movement. We had very good ties with Awami League. So, as expected, Awami League formed the first government. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman became the leader. We had very good ties with Bangladesh. Bangladesh was not creating any problems. In fact, the people of Bangladesh, the government, they were grateful to India, thankful to India for the help India had given. But everything changed in 1975. Just 4 years after Bangladesh was born, Bangladeshi army executed Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Why? Because there were pro-Pakistan elements within the Bangladeshi army. Radical pro-Pakistan elements within Bangladeshi army. They wanted to throw out the government. They were anti-India. At the behest of Pakistan, they targeted Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, his government and his family. It was a brutal period. They assassinated the whole family of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Only two people lived, Sheikh Hasina and her sister, just because they were in Europe, studying in Europe, under India's protection. Or else, even Sheikh Hasina would have been killed. So because of the threat, Sheikh Hasina was brought to India. She grew up in India under Indian protection. Right? So things changed in Bangladesh. The entire government was assassinated. Top ministers were killed. Right? The whole family of Mujibur Rahman was killed and the government was thrown out and the Bangladeshi army captured power. It was this Bangladeshi government which became hostile to India because it was pro-Pakistan. It allowed Pakistan to use Bangladesh to target India. Then in 1990s, the military moved out. Elections were reintroduced. But a party called BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, won the election, which was again a pro-Pakistan party, and it was known for its anti-India sentiments. So this continued until 2009, until Awami League came back to power with a full majority under Sheikh Hasina. So that is why Bangladesh had become hostile between 1975 to 2009. Abhishek is asking, Meghalaya's entire area comes under autonomous district council. Then what is the relevance of having a state government? No, Abhishek, you're wrong. In Meghalaya, only 3 districts are under autonomous district councils, not the whole state. I don't know where you read this. It is incorrect. The 6th schedule autonomy is given only to Garo district, Jaintia district, Kasi district. The Garo Hills, Jaintia Hills, Kasi Hills for the respective tribes. That's the 3 places where autonomous district councils are present. In the rest of Meghalaya, you have the regular state government. Last question, Mitali is asking, sir, isn't it difficult for infrastructure development because of the hilly terrain? It is difficult, but today technology has advanced. We have enough resources, enough money as well to spend more on advanced infrastructure. Now look at the massive projects that we have taken up in Jammu and Kashmir, in Uttarakhand, in Sikkim, and across Northeast India. Right? Today, there is enough engineering advances, architectural advances to make this possible. Right? And more importantly, we have the money, we have the resources, we can pull it off. So in the last 20 years, our approach to infrastructure development has changed. Despite hilly terrain, right? We can create bridges, we can create tunnels, and such infrastructure can be established. Of course, it will be challenging. It will take a lot of money and resources, but India has that capability and we are already improving the infrastructure in Northeast India. All right. So guys, these were the questions. Now, let's quickly head towards the next chapter. The next few chapters are very dynamic. There is no set syllabus. There is no standard book for it. So what I'll do is I'll largely rely on current affairs and current developments. Because for these topics, you don't have a history, a background, a static concept. It doesn't exist. This is all driven by latest evolutions in technology. So we will focus on communication platforms, media and social media. We'll understand how the misuse of communication networks can create security problems. We will give special attention to social media, right? We'll discuss what India is doing to deal with the threats from social media and the internet-based platforms. Then we will have a discussion on cybersecurity. Is that clear? So let's begin with some basics. See, today, media platforms can be conveniently misused. to create real-world security threats. When I say media platforms, I'm referring to two types of media platforms: traditional media and the new media. Traditional media refers to television, radio, print, right? Since time immemorial, since ancient days, we have had communication, right? When verbal communication developed, non-verbal communication had developed, people started writing it, scripts were developed. So through written format and through speech, through word of mouth, communication existed even in ancient times. So what is communicated, either through direct word-to-word mouth communication or through written communication, what if it's not correct? What if it's not factually correct? What if it is deliberately being misinterpreted? Right? That could have adverse consequences. So misuse of media communication is not happening only now. This has been happening from thousands of years. Ever since we humans learned to communicate through speech, through written format, right? Any form of communication can be manipulated. Is that clear? But the threat has increased exponentially because of advances in technology, because of advances in the formats of media. Now, compared to ancient times, medieval times witnessed faster communication, especially after the European Renaissance and the development of printing technique, right? Newspapers came out, magazines, books, pamphlets, flyers could be printed, and communication became easier. The government especially could communicate with the masses. Then came radio, which was a revolutionary technology. Then came television, right? And now we have new forms of media, which are nothing but the internet-based platforms, particularly social media firms. Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, right, and whatnot. All these are internet-based communication platforms. Now, any media platform, any communication platform can be misused, right? But the scale, the reach, the impact, it changes depending on what media you are misusing. If you look at traditional media, by the very nature of traditional media, its reach is limited. How many people read newspapers? How many people listen to radio? How many people watch television? Right? It has a limited reach. And also, in traditional media, the communication is one to many. One channel, one paper is communicating with a larger audience. Is that clear? There is no two-way communication in traditional media. It is one-way communication. Now, are you talking to Hindu editors? No. At the maximum, you can write a letter. If they pick your letter, they will publish that, or else no. They'll publish only 4 or 5 letters every day. So in case of newspapers or even radio or television, there is no two-way communication. That's a limitation of traditional media, and in a way, this was good. Not everybody could express their opinion, right? TV channels would broadcast a show. Radio channels would host a show. You only listen, you only watch. At the maximum, you can call to express your opinion or write a letter, but not everybody will do it. And they won't be able to, open everyone's letter or pick up everyone's call. So traditional media was one to many, one entity, one organization communicating to a large audience of few thousand people, few lakh people, few million audience, right? And there was no two-way communication. Primarily, traditional media, when it started, was news-based media. The focus was on carrying only news. So automatically, many people wouldn't be interested, right? Entertainment, recreation came later. In traditional media, only one format of content can be carried. In print, you can only carry text and images. Radio can only carry audio. TV can carry a mix of audio and video. So the format is limited. The kind of content which can be carried here in traditional media is limited. Also, it takes time to collect information and disseminate the information, there is a time lag in communication. Let's say there is an event which has happened in the US in 1970s or 1950s. Before that news reaches India, it would have already been 24 or 48 hours or sometimes more than that, right? Because traditional media outlets had to maintain a network of reporters, tie up with other agencies, collect reports, conduct a thorough fact check. In that regard, traditional media was more responsible. They would thoroughly check the facts, verify the authenticity of the reports, and then they would publish, then they would broadcast. So, in general, there were more checks and balances. There was a delay as well in reporting a particular event and a development, and not everybody could become a publisher or a broadcaster because it requires a lot of technology, equipment, a large facility. It means you need a lot of money to set up a newspaper, to set up a radio channel or a TV channel. Every common man can't own a newspaper or a TV channel or a radio channel. Very few organizations could do it. So this had both pros and cons. The disadvantage was that communication was slow, media was largely controlled by few, correct? Since it's not two-way communication, not everyone can express their view and opinion. What if the newspaper or TV channel, what if they have a ideological bias, and what if they are promoting a biased view? We see this very frequently with our TV channels, our news channels in India especially, right? All they do is hold a screaming match, a screaming contest, where the host is screaming more than the guest he has invited, right? They invite 10, 20, 30 guests into one show, take up controversial topics, and they push a biased narrative. So media outlets will have an ideological bias, but in the case of India, of course, we have seen a decline in media standards, be it especially with television, right? We have seen a very big decline with our news channels. So the disadvantage here is that since there is no two-way communication, you can't criticize them, you can't express your opinion. The information is controlled by few, right? There are political parties owning news channels, funding news channels. There are private companies owning news channels. So that is a conflict of interest. They'll push their agendas, their ideologies to manipulate the public. So these were disadvantages with traditional media. Communication was slow, right? Information would not reach in real time. And information flow was controlled by a few. In many ways, traditional media was not at all democratic. It was not decentralized, it was highly centralized. But the same weakness of traditional media was its strength. The advantage of traditional media was that there was more focus on fact checking. Because traditional media outlets are bound to be responsible. As the fourth pillar of the democracy, newspapers, they will double check the facts before they publish. Even TV channels, they double check the facts before they broadcast because they have certain codes to follow. They have a code of conduct. They have certain ethical, legal obligations to follow. So they were very careful about what they were publishing. So as a result, fake news could not spread so easily. I'm not saying it's impossible. Fake news, wrong information can be spread in traditional media as well. But the chances were less. And more importantly, the reach was limited. Even if it would have a negative impact on the society, it would be limited to a smaller audience. Is that clear? That was an advantage. It is good because when someone is trying to misuse the platform to create a security situation, if the reach itself is limited, its impact will also be limited, right? Now, I'll give you an example. Let's say communal riots have taken place in one part of the country, all right? In case of traditional media, there would be a time lag in reporting that communal incident. Let's say only newspapers and radio was there. By the time information reaches the media houses, the journalists get to the site of the communal riots, collect information, write reports, check the facts, right? Get it verified, and then publish. The newspapers then have to be distributed and reach the customer. So enough time would have passed, 24 to 48 hours would have passed, thereby reducing the emotional impact of the event. Is that clear? If you can't understand this, I'll give you a relatable example. Now, let's say there is a cricket match going on, a World Cup match, right? Would you like to watch it live or would you like to watch it recorded? I'm 100% sure everybody would like to watch a live match. Why? Because our emotions are triggered. We enjoy that because we know it's happening in real time. If it is some old match, there are replays, put up on many sports channels on OTT platforms. Not many of us go back and watch the old matches because we know what happened. The interest has gone down, the excitement has gone down. Nobody cares about old matches. Even if it's 2 days old, 1 day old, usually we don't go back and watch those matches. But if it is a live match, we are more excited. Why? Because it is real time. It triggers our emotions. That's how human psychology works. The same thing works with regard to bad news as well. Let's say there are riots happening. If someone tells you immediately that riots are happening, your passions are triggered. If you hear that one community has targeted another community, you will get enraged. If you're an extremist, if you're a radical, you might give a call for others as well to take up violence against the other community. But if there is a time lag, if some time has passed after the event, and if it is reported in a very careful, sensitive manner through thorough fact checking, then the emotional impact is reduced, right? So one event in one part of the country will not affect the other part of the country. That was the advantage with traditional media. Now, look at new media. Look at what internet has done. Internet has revolutionized the world. It has transformed our lives permanently. There are many, many advantages with regard to new media, with regard to internet-based media. But the disadvantages are extremely dangerous. This is the problem with technology. As technology advances, it solves many problems. Revolutionary technology especially, it can bring equality, promote democracy, it can create inclusive growth, create opportunities for everyone. These are the advantages. But at the same time, if technology is misused, right, it can have devastating consequences. The consequences become more serious with advancement in technology. As they say, with more power comes more responsibility, right? So the same tool, if it is in the wrong hands, if it's in the elements, in the hands of miscreants and anti-national elements, they can use it for wrong purposes that can create very serious security situations. Because new media offers you many-to-many communication. It's not one-to-many, it's many-to-many. Let's say I go on Instagram, I put up a post, right? And I'm not only communicating with one set of audience, right? I am also getting their posts. I'm watching what my friends are posting, my family members are posting. So it is many-to-many communication. There is a social network created, right? The whole concept of social network is to bring your friends, your colleagues, family, and your acquaintances together, even strangers together, right? Because we in general, humans in general, we have a curiosity to know what's happening in others' lives. That is the curiosity exploited by social media platforms. The technology is built on that. Correct? So it is many-to-many communication. I go on YouTube, I post a video, I post something on my Facebook wall, I read what others are posting. It is clearly many-to-many and it is interactive. There is two-way communication allowed. Right? Otherwise, it will not be a social network. Right? My friend, let's say he posts something about a political party. I will go on his post and I will troll him. I will criticize him because there is a comment section. If I align with what he has posted, I'll hit the like button, right? I'll hit various emojis to express my support. Or I'll put up another counter post to counter what my friend has posted. So this is two-way communication. This is both good and bad. It is good because it makes communication democratic. It gives a voice to everybody. Doesn't matter who you are. You might be educated or illiterate. You might be rich or poor. You might be from an upper caste or a lower caste. You might be from a majority religion, minority religion. Doesn't matter. You are equal on social media, right? It creates an equal level playing field for everyone and gives everyone the same opportunity to communicate and express their views and opinions. So in that regard, it truly promotes freedom of speech, freedom of expression, which wasn't happening in the case of traditional media because communication was largely controlled by few organizations. So here, every user subscriber can air their view, express their opinion, thus making it more democratic. So this is a huge advantage. And the best part about social media and internet-based media is that it is not just news-based. Here, the primary focus is entertainment to keep you hooked. That's why there are different formats of content. It's truly a convergent media. You have videos, different forms of videos, long form videos, reels, shorts, right? You have memes and GIFs. You have elaborate text posts or image based posts. You have audio files that you can add, which keeps you entertained, which keeps you occupied. So it's truly a convergent media that engages the audience, unlike traditional media. Now, I'm sure, tell me honestly, how many of you like reading newspapers? It is boring, right? Because why? It is one format of communication. It's only text and some images here and there. So it's natural for us to feel that reading a newspaper is boring. But we will spend hours by watching reels on Instagram, right? It is more engaging because it's multi-format. It keeps us hooked. That's how the algorithm is designed. This is a great advantage for content creators. It has revolutionized the world by creating a content creator economy, right? Today, there are so many influencers whose livelihood is built on social media, right? They make quite a good amount of money. That is their job. That has become their professional expertise, right? Brands, big brands tie up with the influencers. It has become a new way of marketing, a new way of reaching a bigger audience. This is great. This is actually good for the economy, right? It offers instant communication. I'm sure you would have seen the live feature on all the social media platforms. Wherever you are in the world, you just have to open your phone with a basic internet connection. You can go live and you can transmit the information immediately anywhere in the world. You don't have to rely on any middleman. Now, someone might argue, sir, in TV also there is live. But can you broadcast live television? Can a common man do it? No. Only some TV channels which have the infrastructure, which have invested in the resources, only they can do it. But in case of social media, every person, a fruit vendor, the prime minister, right? You and me, anybody can broadcast instantly. Let's say I witnessed an accident or I'm witnessing a robbery or a crime. I can take images, I can shoot a video and I can put it up immediately, or I can go live, broadcasting this to the larger world. So instant communication, again, it's advantageous, right? Because it speeds up information, but it could become very dangerous in case of certain case events. Now, anybody can become a publisher. Anybody can become a content creator. The advantage is that it gives everybody the opportunity. This is truly democratic. It promotes freedom of speech and expression. All you need is a basic smartphone, which you can get maybe under 5,000 or 6,000 rupees, right? There are basic smartphones available at that rate. And all you need is a basic connection. Even a 2G internet connection is enough, right? If not for videos, at least to post text. 2G connection is also enough. And a basic knowledge how to use the phone. That is it. Anybody, even your grandmother, I'm sure is on social media. My grandparents are on social media. That is the beauty of social media, right? Anybody with a phone and a basic internet connection can access the internet and start expressing their views and opinions. This is a tremendous advantage. But at the same time, if things go wrong, this becomes the biggest threat which emerges from social media. The concern here is the staggering reach of social media. What you post can go viral and your audience is unlimited. You can reach the whole country, the whole world. You can hit millions and millions of views, which is staggering, which was never available with television or radio or newspapers. This is what sets the new media apart. The way it is built is different. It has a lot of advantages. It is good for the global economy. It is good for content creators. It is good for the new age economy which is being built. It creates opportunities for everyone. It actually promotes democratic fundamental rights, especially your right to express, your right to free speech. But the problem is, if things go wrong, right, then it will have such disastrous consequences that you can't even imagine. So that is what we will study under this chapter. Now, some of you might be wondering, what can really happen with social media? Social media is something we used to enjoy, we used to pass time, we used to connect with friends, right? It appears very innocent. We just scroll through it for a few hours, maybe play some games, or engage in some conversation and debates. That's what we all do, regular people do on social media, right? But this can be a weapon much more powerful than even guns and explosives. I'm not even exaggerating. I will discuss few methods through which media platforms can be misused, especially social media, and I will give you some examples. We will look at some real world examples to understand how the virtual world, because internet is a virtual world, it's not real, right? It's on the virtual space. What happens in this virtual space can have a real world impact in your real physical world. So let us see how this happens. Social media or any media can be misused to spread propaganda. What is propaganda? Propaganda is a deliberate, planned, misleading campaign which usually has a political agenda or some kind of social agenda, maybe a religious agenda or a certain ethnic, racial, linguistic agenda. So when someone is trying to drive a political point, when someone is trying to gain political influence or religious influence, they will engage in a targeted, deliberate, planned, organized campaign with manipulated information. This is misleading information that they spread to the masses to manipulate your views, your opinions. This is what we call as propaganda. Like how Naxals, how they over exaggerate the failure of the government to breed resentment, how they claim to be the saviors of the tribals and the farmers in order to promote their ideology, to get support for their Maoist activities. That is propaganda. We studied about Islamic State, right? How Islamic State has leveraged social media to run these misleading planned campaigns to promote its religious fundamentalist ideology. That is propaganda. We have political parties in India and around the world which carefully run these planned misleading campaigns to gain political support and to discredit, defame their opponents. So that is called propaganda. There is always a political agenda or some kind of social agenda behind it. This is not an accident. It's not done by one individual. One person can't do it. It's a planned, organized attempt, right? Organizations, a large group of people are involved where they are spreading deliberate wrong information, misleading information, right? To manipulate your view, your mind, the minds of the masses, the choices of the masses. They can achieve this by spreading rumors. Rumors are not entirely true, or it could be entirely false information. That is a rumor. A rumor is a piece of information which is completely false, right? Someone has simply lied about this particular rumor, or there is some truth to it, but they have twisted it. I'm sure in schools, colleges, even in offices, even in our families, lot of rumors spread around, right? If you look at, let's say, your group of aunties like in your family. They will gossip around a lot. Many of the points that they discuss, right? Not all of it is true. Many of it will be entirely false. They'll be bitching about some other relative, what they are doing, what their son is doing, what their daughter is doing, right? They will not even be aware of the truth, but still they will be talking, gossiping about it. That is a rumor. Either it's entirely false or there is some truth to it, but they're twisting it. So this is where fake news comes in. Fake news is a piece of information which is factually incorrect. Is that clear? Fake news is a piece of information which is factually incorrect. It is not the truth. It is a lie. Now, such lies and such misleading information can be spread deliberately to engage in propaganda. Is that clear? Here we have to understand two very important terms. One is misinformation and disinformation. When it comes to rumors and fake news and propaganda campaigns, there are two types of campaigns that are run. One is a misinformation campaign. The other is a disinformation campaign. In case of misinformation, the facts are misrepresented. Is that clear? In case of misinformation, the facts are either completely wrong or it is partially incorrect. But however, there is no bad intention here. There is no intention to harm anyone. If without any intention to harm anyone, without any intention to carry out propaganda, if facts are being manipulated knowingly or unknowingly, that is what we call as misinformation. Now, let's say, for example, let's say I gave you the wrong information about Naga insurgency. Let's say instead of saying Naga insurgency started on 14th August 1947, I said Naga insurgency started in 1980. Now, this is wrong information I'm giving you, right? But my intention is not to harm anyone. Unknowingly, I've done a mistake. But you are consuming it. You are believing it, right? Since I'm teaching you, you assume that I'm teaching correctly. And you think that, okay, Naga insurgency started in 1980. So all of you, whoever is in the class, you believed it. So this was an unintentional mistake that had an impact, but there is no bad intention behind it. But eventually, it's a wrong information which has been communicated. So that is misinformation. Is that clear? Disinformation is designed to defame someone, to discredit someone. There is a clear intention to harm. Fake news, partially incorrect information, and rumors are spread in a disinformation campaign, and there is a clear intent to harm someone, to harm their image, their credibility, to spread negativity about someone. That is called disinformation. Is that clear? Let's say there is one politician, right, who keeps mocking his political opponent. He will do it deliberately. He will deliberately spread fake news and rumors, right, with his audience. And he clearly has an intention to harm the image, the credibility of the opponent. That is disinformation. Information is being spread with an intention to discredit someone, to defame someone. So this is the two types of campaigns you see, misinformation and disinformation, right? So rumors are information, pieces of gossip, information which is entirely false or it's not rooted in truth. Fake news is completely incorrect. It's factually incorrect. It's far away from truth. Propaganda is a campaign where rumors and fake news is used to mislead the audience, mislead the masses. There is a clear attempt, a planned attempt to manipulate the opinion, the choices, the decisions of the masses. There's a clear intention to spread a political agenda or some kind of ideology. So this is what can be done by misusing media. We also have something called paid news. You would have heard about this. What is paid news? Paid news is basically advertisement presented as news. When advertisement is wrongfully, deliberately presented as news, that is misleading. For example, when you read the Hindu or Indian Express, when you open the actual paper, within a glance, with just one glance, you get to know what is a news article, what is an advertisement. How? Look at the Delhi edition. There are so many IAS institutes posting ads, right? All of us, a lot of ads come up. The moment you look at the front page, you get to know these are ads by the IAS institutes. These are the news articles published by the Hindu. Because the Hindu has put a lot of effort to distinguish the advertisement from the actual news article. Because what we read as news is something that we really believe in, right? Because there is credibility to it. There is a fact checking done. The information is thoroughly verified. And what is presented as news is something that's factual, and we consume that as the truth, right? But advertisement, we don't have the same confidence. Advertisement, we know it's being sponsored. We know the company is trying to sell something. So we may believe it, we may not believe it, but we are careful, right? So the way we perceive the audience, the way the audience perceives a piece of information, depending on whether it's an ad or a news item, it differs depending on how it is presented. Now, tomorrow, what if the Hindu takes money from, let's say, a company, or let's say a movie is released, okay? The movie producer has paid a lot of money to the Hindu. We don't know that, and the Hindu is not telling us that. What if Hindu writes a very positive review and presents it as a news article? They write it like an editorial or a column, right? They explore the issue the movie is dealing with, and they praise the movie and the skills, right? And you get excited. You actually think this is a news article by a good reviewer, a professional reviewer, and you might go and watch the movie. You never knew that the producer had paid the newspaper to write this positive article. That is basically advertisement, but they presented this as news to you. So we believed in it and we got misled. You go and watch the movie, then you realize it's a crappy movie, right? So that is called a paid news. Imagine a politician doing it. Imagine a politician tying up with a TV news channel, right? Paying money to the editor, to the anchor, and they present an argument in news debates where they are praising the politician, his achievements, right? They're appreciating his work. The audience who's watching it, they'll actually think, oh, this is correct, this is news. This politician has done all this. In reality, we didn't know that that guy had paid money for them to promote this politician, right? So this is paid news. They didn't tell us it is an advertisement. So if someone conceals the ads and presents it as news, that is paid news. Is that clear? So these are the different ways through which media platforms can be misused, and any propaganda campaign is designed to achieve social engineering. This is the end goal of any propaganda campaign. Be it a government, a foreign country, an intelligence agency, or a terrorist group, or a radical group, a religious organization, even a private company for that matter, right? Be it any entity or organization, whoever is sponsoring a propaganda campaign, their end goal, their final objective is to achieve social engineering. That is the end game. What is social engineering? Engineering the minds of the society. Engineering the minds of the society. That is called social engineering. If through a targeted campaign of propaganda, which has a mix of fake news, rumors, misinformation, disinformation, and paid news, and I run this campaign for a few weeks, few months, and at the end, if I can influence a large audience, if I can change the mind and the views of, let's say, a few lakh people or a few million people, that is social engineering. Let me give you an example for this. Let's take an example of some bad movie which came out. You guys tell me which was the worst movie that you saw. Just for the sake of example. A terrible movie that recently came out. Any example? Animal. Very good. Or even Tiger. Yes, Tiger 3. Right? Horrible movies. Watch both of them. Terrible movies. Again, personal opinion. But yeah, these were not well-made movies. Right? Now let's say Tiger 3 has released or Animal has released. We have heard the genuine feedback from our friends. They said it's not good. They didn't like it. I have no interest now to go and watch this movie. I saw the trailer as well. I have no interest. I didn't like it. And I've clearly made up my mind that I'm not going to watch this movie. Not in theater, not even on OTT. If it comes, I'll not watch it. But now the producers realize they are going to make a big loss. So what will they do? They might carry out a propaganda campaign. They will put some money behind a propaganda campaign. They will hire agencies which are available to do that. They provide this as a service. All right. They pay them very well. And they will plan a carefully crafted propaganda campaign. They will spread some rumors. Rumors about the actor. Salman Khan is finally getting married. Right? It may not happen, but the rumor is enough to get your interest, the interest of the people. If you read that news somewhere, your attention will somewhere go towards Tiger 3. Then they will spread rumors about the heroine, that the hero and the heroine are, they are in a relationship. They'll spread some fake news as well. So this is very easy to do through newspapers, TV channels, and especially through social media. They will pay some reviewers. Very credible, legitimate reviewers might be paid money. They will take money as advertisement and present this as their professional opinion, professional review. So everywhere, your social media world is getting flooded with positive reviews all of a sudden. Right? You heard some rumors first about the actors, the actresses, or the plot, or they might trigger a controversy as well. Right? They might pay some radical group deliberately to protest on some issue related to the movie. That controversy is enough. Even negative publicity is good publicity. That is the mantra in marketing world. Right? So the word is out there. Nobody is forgetting Tiger 3 and Animal. The word is out there. Everybody is talking about it. Positively or negatively, the word is there. Then they will spread some positive news. Right? And the algorithms on social media are such that once you start watching something, liking something, the same content will start appearing on your feed. You'd have experienced that. Like, let's say you started UPSC preparation, right? The moment you saw one IAS video, automatically your YouTube, your Instagram is flooded with all IAS channels and IAS pages. Because the algorithm picks up your behavior, your practices, your liking, your disliking. So once you have shown some interest in the campaign that they are running, automatically your social media world, your virtual world, which we are surrounded with, gets flooded with all the ads that they are sponsoring, the reviews that they are sponsoring. After 5 days, 1 week, there is so much that you're hearing about it. Now you're changing your mind. You're questioning yourself. You're thinking, should I go and watch this movie? I've heard such things about it, such negative things or positive things. Finally, let me check it out. In fact, I will be very honest. I saw Animal because of all the negative reviews. I never wanted to see it. I saw the trailer. I knew what it would be. It would be another Arjun Reddy. I never wanted to watch it. But hearing all the negative review, I changed my mind. I went and watched the movie. That is how you can be tricked. This tricks your mind, this campaign, and you will not even know that you have been tricked. You have been misled. You think you have made the choice. No, you did not. Someone manipulated you through a carefully built propaganda campaign to make a change in your decision. Is that clear? Now imagine this again. I never wanted to watch this movie, but I was convinced and I believed that this is my decision to go and watch the movie. A terrible movie at that. I wasted money. I wasted my time. Now who benefited? The producer, the ad agency that ran the campaign, right? Now, apply the same logic for elections. Can a political party influence the voters to change their voting preference? The answer is yes. By manipulating media, misusing media, and by running propaganda campaigns, they can achieve social engineering. They can manipulate voters to change their preference, their party preference. So imagine the power of media and social media. It means a country which is powerful enough, which has enough resources, can manipulate elections in another country, right? A hostile country, let's say, can sponsor a targeted campaign in another country where elections are happening to ensure a favorable leader and a favorable party comes to power. Now imagine this power in the hands of a large private conglomerate. They can manipulate the masses to keep purchasing their own products, and they can create a monopoly in the market. So the consequences are even unimaginable. That is the power of propaganda and social engineering. This is where the risk of social media becomes very serious. And the worst part is that illicit, illegal activities can also be carried out, especially on social media. Organized crime can be enabled on social media platforms. Is that clear? For example, drugs are being sold on social media through social media channels, right? Child pornography has been circulated. Even arms, explosives have been traded through social media platforms. Terrorists, criminals are communicating through encrypted social media apps. So such illicit, illegal activities can also flourish on social media. So this is where the threat lies. This is where the virtual world will have a real world impact. It will start having real world consequences. So let's come back and discuss this after a short break. We'll take a 15 minutes break. It's 11:47. Come back by 12:05. We'll come back and discuss with some examples. I'll give you the consequences. I'll take a few examples quickly, and then we'll talk about how India is trying to regulate social media. All right? So please come back at 12:05. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the session. So, before the break, we were talking about the role of media and social media and how these platforms can be misused. Now, let us understand the consequences. If these platforms are misused, let's understand the real world impact and how it can create security challenges for the state and for democratic societies. Many experts believe that social media, especially, has emerged as a major threat for civilized liberal democracies. It's being seen as a threat for democratic rights and constitutional states that are set up. So, what are these security threats? What kind of challenges are presented through the misuse of media platforms? One major concern is how democracies can be manipulated by meddling with elections. Political parties, governments, and hostile countries through their intelligence agencies. They can all engage in propaganda, carry out social engineering in order to manipulate the choice of the voter. Is that clear? As I explained, by spreading the right rumors and fake news, and by carrying paid news as well as part of the propaganda campaign, the minds of the voters can be changed. They can be engineered to vote for a leader, for a party, and this can be easily achieved by over exaggerating the claims of one party and one leader. It is also achieved by discrediting the opponents, right? In fact, both strategies are used to try and manipulate the choice of the voter in order to swing the elections in favor of one leader and one party. Now, this could shake the very foundation of a democracy. Let's say your own government is doing it, or let's say a political party which is contesting the election is doing it, or let's say a foreign government through its intelligence agencies trying to manipulate elections. Then these represent the biggest risks for the democratic order that we have created. On the other hand, these campaigns can be used to trigger unrest, to increase the social divisions, to widen the social divide on religious lines, on ethnic, racial lines, to instigate riots, mob violence, or even to instigate a rebellion against the state itself. This could lead to a civil war like situation that can destabilize even stable countries. Countries which are completely stable can be destabilized by running these campaigns through which mobs and violent incidents can be triggered by polarizing the society on the lines of the divisions present in the society. Communal polarization is very easy to achieve through social media. Extremist organizations, radical religious organizations, they can easily promote communal tendencies and divide the society on religious lines. Similarly, ethnic and racial divisions can be exploited to trigger unrest in a country, to create law and order problems, to promote hate speech against another community, to instigate both sides to engage in targeted riots and mob violence that eventually could turn into a civil war, or to instigate a popular rebellion against the government, right? So, if someone has an agenda to carry out regime change, to push the government out and capture power, those vested interests can trigger rebellions as well. Now, let's say a major foreign power, it wants to remove the government in a small country. This country is a rival of this big power. By misusing social media, by running the right campaigns, they can instigate large-scale riots and rebellions that could threaten the stability of that state, and they could ensure that the government is toppled. These are very real threats. These are not imaginary threats. It's not the stuff of science fiction. This is a reality. It has already happened. Extremist organizations, including terrorist groups and insurgents, they can use the platforms to spread their radical ideology. We have studied how Islamic State pioneered the usage of social media to spread its religious fundamentalist ideology. Criminal organizations can use social media for enabling organized crime on the dark net. The dark net is the hidden part of the internet, the bottom layer of the internet, which is highly encrypted, where the user becomes anonymous. You can become virtually anonymous if you know how to access the dark net. You need few special routers and special skills to access the dark net. If you're able to do that, you can become anonymous. You can conceal your identity. You can conceal your IP address of your device and your location. Using this anonymity, you can engage in illegal activities to smuggle and sell drugs, to sell arms and weapons, right? To propagate child pornography, to even enable cyber crimes and money laundering and terrorist financing. All these illegal activities can be carried out via social media platforms and by using the dark net. Especially with the emergence of cryptocurrencies and digital currencies, it has become easier to launder money by converting fiat currency to these digital and cryptocurrencies. Because cryptocurrencies are built on anonymity. For example, a currency like Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin gives you complete anonymity. The others cannot get to know who owns the currency, who's carrying out the transactions. So with this anonymity, you can engage in cross-border transactions, send money, move money from one country to another, to launder money, and to even finance terrorist activities. That is why cyber criminals who extract ransoms, right? They rely on payments made through crypto and digital currencies so that authorities cannot trace them and identify them. So several illegal illicit activities, including organized crime, has been enabled through social media and especially through the darknet. So these are the challenges, the security challenges that countries are facing around the world. Now let us look at some real examples where these threats have come up. Remember the Arab Spring movement, which we studied in previous classes? That is a classic example. This was a pro-democracy movement, a revolutionary movement that broke out in an African country called Tunisia. Here, the people of Tunisia were frustrated with government corruption and dictatorship. And these frustrated people of Tunisia, they organized themselves on Facebook in 2010. They started organizing via Facebook and even WhatsApp, which was just gaining popularity. And they protested against the dictatorship. And they pushed for a regime change. And they succeeded in pushing the dictator out. Now you might say this is a good thing. Yes, it was initially. Because Tunisians that suffered under a dictatorial rule, that suffered from government corruption, so when they could organize easily through Facebook and WhatsApp and protest for weeks together, eventually leading to the step down of the dictator, this was great success for Tunisians because it had strengthened democracy in their country. But very quickly, this was exploited by many big powers. They started pushing these protests into other countries as well. This movement organically spread in the region to other countries like Egypt. In Egypt as well, the revolution succeeded. The people pushed out the then dictator, Hosni Mubarak, was pushed out. And the people had succeeded in staging a revolution by using Facebook and WhatsApp to organize themselves and to lead these protests. Once these developments happened in Tunisia and Egypt, countries realized the power of social media. Countries like US and other powers like Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, they realized that if they could manipulate social media, they could instigate rebellions in their enemy countries. In their target countries, rebellions can be instigated to push out the governments and the leaders that they don't want. This is how countries like Syria, Libya, they were pushed into a civil war by promoting such rebellions, and there was an involvement of social media misuse, right? Western countries led by US, along with its allies, Saudi, Israel, etc., they targeted their rival countries like Syria, Libya, and others, and they pushed rebellions, which pushed the countries into a civil war. Iran retaliated by pushing such protests in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and in other Sunni countries. So, this series of protests that developed across North Africa and West Asia in 2010 2011 is called the Arab Spring movement. Some of it was genuine and organic, some of it was sponsored, but in this entire movement that spread across the region, there was a clear misuse of social media, right? There was an attempt, an organized propaganda to promote negative sentiments about the government, about the leaders, so that people can be pushed to come out on the streets to rebel and organize themselves in order to bring down those governments. This was one of the first experiences the world had with the misuse of social media. Then, in a couple of years, in 2013, India had its first experience where misuse of social media created a real security problem. Let me tell you what happened. This was in 2012, 2013. It was during this period. In the Bodo region, the NDFB, which we studied, the notorious terrorist group, it had targeted the Muslim villages in Kokrajhar. We understood earlier today that these Bodo groups have targeted non-Bodos. Especially, they have targeted the Muslims here who are Indians, and then they have labeled them as Bengali migrants, that is Bangladeshi illegal migrants. So NDFB has been known to attack Muslims in the region, and then it has branded them as Bangladeshi illegal migrants. So in Kokrajhar, Muslim villages were targeted, several people were killed in these communal riots that occurred in 2012. Is that clear? This was one communal incident. After this communal riot, across the country, protests were organized against this atrocity. In many parts of the country, several Muslim organizations and other social activist organizations, they organized a protest to raise their voice against the atrocity that happened in Kokrajhar. So as a result, there were some tensions in the country, right? And immediately, a fake message started circulating on WhatsApp and through SMS, which claimed that Muslims are planning to attack people from Northeast India as revenge for Kokrajhar riots. This was a fake message, a rumor, spread via WhatsApp and text messages that went viral. And many people from Northeast India, especially settled in South Indian cities, they believed the message and they panicked. There was no such plot to attack people from Northeast India. The message claimed that since Bodos had attacked Muslims in Kokrajhar, now Muslims in other parts of India will take revenge against people of Northeast India. This was a lie, a blatant fake news. But those who received the messages, especially students and workers from Northeast India, who are settled in various Indian cities, right, particularly in South India, in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, they really thought that this was a real threat. Because social media was very new to us in 2010, 2011. There was a tendency to believe whatever we read was true. In fact, even now, many people believe whatever they read on social media is true. So those people who assumed that this is a real threat, they started running away from the cities. Students and workers from Northeast India, they gave up their classes, their work, their jobs. They packed everything and they started fleeing from other cities back to their homes in Northeast India. This led to an exodus of Northeast students and workers from Indian cities, from other Indian cities towards back to Northeast India. Airports, railway stations, bus stations were flooded overnight. But fortunately, nothing untoward happened. The authorities acted and they convinced everyone that, see, there is no real threat. This is just a rumor which is being spread. There is no such planned attempt to target people from Northeast India. So India managed to diffuse a situation. But imagine if things had gone wrong. Even one incident here and there in such a tense environment was enough to create permanent enmity between Muslims and the people from Northeast India. That would have unnecessarily widened our social divisions. So this was India's first experience with misuse of social media and how it could create a real security challenge. Further investigation revealed that most likely the origin of this message, this rumor, came from Pakistan. So the suspicion was there was an involvement of Pakistani intelligence agency to exploit the tense communal situation in the country to spread hatred between communities and to trigger riots. It was after these two incidents that UPSC added this chapter as part of internal security. In 2013, UPSC updated the syllabus. The new syllabus format was introduced. That's when all these new subjects were added. And under internal security, a whole chapter was given for this, for misuse of media and social media, because of Arab Spring and exodus of Northeast people from South Indian cities. These back-to-back incidents, right, taught India a very big lesson that, see, governments can be toppled. There is a possibility that rebellions can be triggered, riots, mob violence, and communal polarization can be triggered. So very quickly, countries realize that social media can get very dangerous if it is not regulated. There are many more examples I can give you. In the US presidential elections of 2016 and 2020, there were very strong allegations that Russian intelligence agencies had interfered. They were trying to push a positive campaign for Donald Trump, allegedly. US intelligence agencies, they strongly believed that Russian intelligence was involved in a social media campaign on Facebook and other platforms to deliberately push the ideology of Donald Trump and ensure that he gets more votes. Imagine a foreign rival country, a hostile country, sponsoring a certain campaign, a certain candidate, a certain party. Now that is the gravest national security risk. Manipulation of elections is a risk for your democracy itself. Although these allegations were not entirely proven, there has been substantial evidence to show that there was some degree of Russian involvement in manipulating the US presidential elections. There was another shocking incident in India between 2014 and 2017. During these 3 to 4 years, there was a fake WhatsApp message that went viral in different parts of the country. All right, the message claimed that there is a child lifting gang in our locality, in our neighborhood, meaning there are child kidnappers roaming around. They are looking to kidnap your children. So please be careful. Basically, it was a message to the parents. Along with the message, there was a description of how the kidnappers looked. There was a small video attached as well, which looked like a CCTV footage showing two poor people who appear to be like beggars or street hawkers, appearing to be kidnapping a child in front of the child's home and running away with the child. This was entirely fake. The video was actually a awareness video shot by a NGO in Pakistan. In Pakistan, there is a big problem of child kidnapping. So a NGO, a social organization in Pakistan, had shot this video for awareness. They had staged this video to show how kidnappers might kidnap their child, and the idea was to spread awareness amongst Pakistani parents. This video was clipped. Only that kidnapping part was taken, attached with this message saying that there are child kidnappers roaming around, be careful. Now, people who received this message in different parts of the country, in many cases, they actually believed that this was true. Right? And if they spotted anyone who looked like a poor person, a beggar or a street hawker, they assumed that these were the kidnappers and they would beat them up. The whole mobs would assemble and the mob would lynch that person. These were innocent people who had done nothing. Believe it or not, this single rumor, this single WhatsApp message is responsible for at least 30 mob lynching deaths in India. Initially, the police, they did not see the pattern because it was happening in different points of time in different places. For some weeks, the message went viral in Tamil Nadu, then Andhra Pradesh, then Maharashtra, then Assam. So it kept moving around through social media. As similar cases came up, right, state police across the country realized that there is a pattern to this. In all these incidents, the reason why the mob beat up this person to his death was because of a message they got. They assumed that this is the child kidnapper. So the pattern was clear, and then the police authorities worked with WhatsApp to put an end to this message, to ensure that this message doesn't circulate anymore. So you can imagine the consequences. People were killed, innocent people have been killed because of fake WhatsApp rumors. It triggered mob lynching incidents in India. The other important example is the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal. Cambridge Analytica was a political consulting firm which provided political consulting services to political parties around the world. It has many big clients. From India, BJP and Congress both were clients of Cambridge Analytica. Similarly, around the world, major parties, they had tied up with Cambridge Analytica. There's nothing wrong in taking the services of a political consulting firm. That's completely valid and legal. They basically help in planning your election campaign, in strategizing your election campaign, right? But the problem here was Cambridge Analytica had bought personal data from Facebook, and Facebook had blatantly sold users' personal data without the consent of the user. Without telling the user as to whom they were selling the data, they had sold the data to a political consulting firm, and the data that was sold was that of US voters. And what did Cambridge Analytica do? It used the data to understand the profile, the behavior, the choices of the user. It identified who support Democrats and who support Republicans, and who are in between, who are undecided voters. Because see, social media applications, I hope you know, not just social media, in fact, any mobile application, right? They keep track of your activities. They collect a lot of personal, non-personal data. From basic data like your name, your age, your sex, your home address, your location, basically, your workplace, your profession, your educational background, right? From such basic information to even detailed, in-depth information. Like what are you searching on the internet, right? What are you purchasing on e-commerce platforms? What kind of videos do you like? What is your religious, political affiliation? What is your sexual orientation? All such behavioral traits can be deduced by looking at your user behavior. So a lot of this data is getting logged in these apps, and they harvest the data. That is how all these companies make money. Today, data is the new gold. Data is the new oil. In the fourth stage of industrial revolution, which is driven by artificial intelligence, data is everything. Those who control data, they will control the world, right? So whatever free apps that we use, trust me, they are not free. Don't think Facebook is free, Instagram is free, WhatsApp is free. They are not. You are paying a price, maybe not through your money, but you're paying them through your data, because data is that valuable, right? Companies use your data for various reasons. Some of it is legitimate. For legitimate business reasons, your data can be used. Monetizing the data is the very business model of all the tech companies. Or else, how will they run? How will they make money? Business is about profit. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is, are they telling you what kind of data are they collecting? Are they taking your permission? Are they telling you how they are using the data and to whom they are selling the data? This is where the risk comes up, right? There are applications which go even more intimate. They will ask access to your contact book. I'm sure you would have noticed when you download certain apps, if you have to use the application, right? you have to give certain permissions. You have to give permission to access the contact book, the phone log. Why are they doing it? They want your contacts. They want to know who's your family member, who are your parents, who are your siblings, who are your friends, who are your colleagues. They match this data with the accounts they have on their platform. The algorithm does that. The algorithm figures out, okay, that this is your social circle. These are the people closer to you. That is determined, deduced by the algorithm by looking at your contact book and your phone logs. It asks access for microphone and camera as well, which means the app, it may switch on the mic and even the camera to capture audio and video and pictures without your explicit permission. Sometimes this is needed for certain apps, but not every time. This is very intimate data. Your personal space is being intruded. Have you ever seen a situation where, let's say, you had a conversation with your friend about joining a gym, right? You didn't do any search. You didn't search online, right, about the best gym in your locality. You didn't do any kind of online research. You're simply talking to your friend that I'm thinking of joining a gym. This conversation, this one line is enough. Within few minutes or few hours, you will be flooded with advertisements from the nearby gyms, health related products, health supplements, etc. How did this happen? You never searched anywhere, you never told anyone, you just had one conversation with your friend. Essentially, the app had picked up your audio, right? This has happened in several instances. That is how the algorithms work. They not only monitor what you type, what you search online, what you like and what you dislike, they could monitor your audio. It might even take pictures and videos. You might have initially given permission, but later it will not ask for individual permission. So the algorithms figure out what is your day-to-day life, what is your activity, what is your behavior, what is your personality trait. Basically, a whole profile is created for every user, right? And this is very sensitive data. If it falls into the wrong hands, it can be misused with disastrous consequences, right? If it lands in the hands of cyber criminals, they can steal all the money in your bank account because they have all your personal details, right? They can give you a call or a message, right, sounding like a legitimate entity, right? They can share your personal information to sound legitimate, and they might trick you to reveal sensitive information, including your password, your card pin number, OTPs, etc. Your whole identity can be erased. Your digital identity can be erased, and the identity can be given to someone else. Some criminal or terrorist might take over your identity. So there are a lot of risks in the digital world, and this is something which has not been addressed adequately. In this incident, Facebook had sold the data of US citizens to this company without the explicit consent of the users. And Cambridge Analytica, what did it do? It created the profile, built the profile to understand the voting preferences of these targeted US citizens. It figured out, okay, that these voters are loyal to Democrat Party. No matter what, they'll vote for Democrat Party. So there's no point in influencing them. There are some other voters who will vote for Republican Party no matter what. They are loyalists. Again, there's no point in influencing them, right? Whatever good or bad happens, they will still vote for the same party. The ones who really decide the election are the undecided voters who wait till the last minute to decide, right? They will see which party is better, which leader has done better, and they'll decide at the last minute. Now, this is where you have an opportunity to swing the election. If you target the undecided voters properly with a well-designed campaign, you can push them to switch their opinion. You can push them to vote in a certain direction for a certain party and a leader and ensure that you can manipulate the election results. Of course, it's very complicated, but at a constituency level, this can be done, right? And Cambridge Analytica was doing exactly that. It was pushing targeted ads, targeted propaganda campaigns to influence the undecided American voters. When this got revealed, it became a huge scandal, and Facebook faced a lot of criticism for what it had done. This had enabled manipulation of elections. It had breached the data privacy of US citizens. Mark Zuckerberg was summoned by the US Senate and Congress and questioned in front of the elected representatives. Right? This is one example I'm giving you. Then there have been some deadly challenges. I'm sure many of you would have participated in the fun challenges, right? The ice bucket challenge, or let's say there is a viral dance trend. Everybody performs the hook step and they propagate it. They tag others to perform the same challenge. So there are many such challenges that go on various platforms. So on certain platforms, right, there are certain games which are promoted. Basically, some tasks are given. You have to perform the task, and once you complete the task, the next task will be given to you. There have been some sadistic games designed by certain elements where they have targeted children, minors, especially teenagers. One such notorious challenge was the Blue Whale Challenge. I don't know if you've heard about it. The Blue Whale Challenge was designed to target teenagers, especially, right? Because they're undergoing a very emotional phase as they are hitting puberty. It's a difficult period for a teenager. They are more spontaneous, they're more reactive, right? So the challenge was designed in such a way, the tasks were designed in such a way that the idea was to isolate the child from their family, friends, and their students. That is the friends in school or college. The tasks were such that if the teenager performed a few tasks thinking it's just a game, right? After a few weeks, the teenager would be cut off from the social world. The task would be like that you have to lock up in the room, stay in the room for 24 hours. You shouldn't talk to anyone. For example, you shouldn't go to school for 1 week. These were the kind of challenges given. So over a period of time, the idea was to isolate the teenager, cut them off from their social circle, distance them from the parents, the family, friends, etc. So this pushed the teenagers into depression, anxiety, right? Then the next level of tasks were given, which promotes suicidal tendencies, suicidal thoughts. And the final task, the last task, was to push the teenager to commit suicide. This was the final challenge. And many incidents around the world, including in India, were tied with the Blue Whale Challenge. There have been even more pervert games, sadistic games, where youngsters again are targeted, especially those who are addicted to gaming, violent games. They were given real world violent challenges, like using a blade to cut someone, stabbing someone. This would escalate to the level of pushing the child to committing a murder. Such games have been promoted as challenges, and this represents a social threat. It is a security threat. These are the different ways in which social media has already been misused. From manipulating elections to triggering riots to leading to communal social polarization, mob lynching incidents, and other such security related crisis situations have been created by misusing social media. So, given these risks and concerns, what can we do? What can be done by the government? What can the companies do? The social media companies, they have a responsibility as well. And what can we do as citizens and users? That is obviously the next big question, right? How do we deal with this threat? How do we counter fake news? How do we prevent manipulation of elections? How do we ensure that crimes committed through social media is prevented? How do we investigate such crimes? How do we get hold of these criminals and the accused, and how do we punish them? These are the big questions. So let me give you some solutions. Let us understand what has been done in India. We will discuss various government measures, policies. We'll also talk about a law that was recently passed. And we'll also discuss a set of rules that have been notified. All right, and that completes this chapter. One best way to counter fake news is to bring out the truth. If someone is lying, counter them with the truth. As simple as that. This is very effective. But unfortunately, again, human psychology is such that there is an inclination to believe in fake news than truth. But still, bringing out the truth, bringing out authentic, factual information to counter fake news is very effective. It's a very effective tool. So how can we do this? The government, the then Manmohan Singh government, after Arab Spring movement, after the exodus of Northeast people from South Indian cities, right? Manmohan Singh government realized that social media platforms are getting dangerous. Around the world, there was realization that we have to do something about the menace of fake news and the misuse of social media. So if UPSC introduced the chapter in our syllabus, right, the government issued a set of guidelines. A social media guideline framework was created to encourage every government organization to open official accounts on all social media platforms. See, this was very new to the government as well, right? Governments didn't have much of an online presence except for their websites. That too, in the case of India, the websites were very poorly designed. Not everyone will go on official websites and look for information all the time. So it was essential for the government itself to come on social media. So for this, the Manmohan Singh government gave a proactive push. A policy was framed. It was an internal policy for the government itself. So a set of guidelines were drafted. What kind of accounts have to be created? Who should manage them? What are the do's and don'ts? What should we post? What we shouldn't post? Right? So such guidelines were created and circulated across all organs of the government. So this pushed every institution of the government to come out and have an official presence on all social media platforms, starting right with the Prime Minister. Right? A personal account for the PM was opened. The PM's office, PMO, established its own account. Ministry of External Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs, the Armed Forces, ISRO, right? Your state chief minister, the CM's office, the meteorological department, right? Your state police, your city police, your local police station, every institution in the government, from the state to the local level, they were pushed to have an official presence on all platforms. That is why today you see that the government itself is very active on social media, right? All ministries, departments, and various organs of the government, they all have an official presence on YouTube, on Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, everywhere. Once they spot any fake information, they will bring out the authentic information, the official information from the government. People can tag the government accounts and raise the complaints regarding fake news, right? So this allows the government a quick update about what is happening and a quick reaction can be provided. Let's say fake news is circulating, users can tag the concerned police or the concerned government department, so that will draw their attention and immediately they will counter it with authentic factual information. So this is one way of tackling fake news. Government itself having a presence, official presence, through a well-defined policy and countering any kind of misinformation and fake news with authentic official information. The next responsibility is with the social media companies. All the social media firms, they have a huge responsibility on their shoulder. There is a need for them to become more transparent and they should cooperate with law enforcement agencies. They should obey the law of the land. This has become a concern. Many social media firms, they didn't even have a presence in India, even though India was one of their biggest subscriber base, right? Their offices would be located abroad. Their data centers would be located abroad. So basically, they would operate virtually in India or with very limited physical presence in India. They would have lakhs and millions of Indian users, and all the Indian data was being taken outside and stored in foreign data centers. Now, if tomorrow something goes wrong, like for example, the fake rumor that led to exodus of Northeast people, or the fake rumor that led to killing of innocent people. Now, if police and law enforcement, if they have to reach out to the company to put an end to that message, to get the message stopped from further circulation. Or if we want information from the company as to who created this message, right? We have to get hold of the guy who originated this message. That person is responsible for it. He has to be punished. So for that, we need cooperation from the company. But these companies denied to cooperate with the authorities. I'll explain this in more detail. I'll come to it. I'll explain why the companies don't cooperate. So within the organization, their functioning is not very transparent. They're not transparent about the algorithm, how it works, what kind of data they are collecting, how they are using the data, right? This is not very clearly established by the companies. And when a real situation comes up, even if police and law enforcement agencies raise a request, they refuse to cooperate. They refuse to take down certain posts and messages. And they don't give any information as to who originated, who created the message in the first place. Even if you get a judicial order from the court, even then sometimes they were not cooperating, right? So this had become a concern, and it is still a concern even today. So this led to a clash between the government and the social media companies. Both had a different position, a different argument, and both had certain legitimate grounds. But thankfully, as the risks increased, social media companies also contributed to the effort to fight fake news and the menace created by social media. For example, they came out with simple innovations, technological innovations to arrest some of the challenges. Have you noticed in WhatsApp, you can't do mass forwarding like before. A limit, a cap has been placed on the number of contacts to which you can forward a message, especially messages that are going viral, which are reaching lakhs of people, millions of people. Automatically, there is a restriction placed by the app on the back end. You can forward the message only to 5 contacts, sometimes only to 1 contact. Essentially, it's a disincentive. Like, you will not sit and hit every single contact in your book to send it to everyone. Those days are gone. Like, at one point, people were crazy about sending forwards, right? People would put a lot of effort to forward everything to their friends and family. Right now, nobody is interested. If you have to individually select every contact, people will stop doing it, right? So placing a limit on WhatsApp forward was a genius innovation. Very simple innovation, but it had a huge impact. It helped in curbing messages from going viral beyond a certain point. Then the blue tick mark, which symbolizes an official verified account. It was very crucial because anybody can open an account in anyone's name. I can impersonate you, you can impersonate me. All you need is few pictures, right? It's easy to create an account and put up those pictures. Forget us, forget the common people. What about celebrities? What about politicians, the leaders? What if there are 100 accounts in the name of Shah Rukh Khan? How will you know which is the official account? Right? And what if the fake accounts, what if they're spreading wrong information in the name of Shah Rukh Khan? What if there are 50 accounts in the name of Prime Minister Modi? How will you realize which is the official account? Miscreants who create the account can misuse this. They can spread wrong messages in the name of the Prime Minister. This can have very serious consequences, right? So that is why it was important to distinguish the official accounts, the verified accounts. So what the companies did was a very genius trick, a very simple innovation. They introduced a verification process, and only those who pass the verification test will get a blue tick. Right? The moment you look at it, you get to know this is the official verified account. It's given to celebrities, influencers, politicians and leaders, and even to government institutions, official institutions, and private organizations as well. Any legitimate organization or well-known individual can apply for verification, and you can get your account verified. For example, look at our YouTube channel, Byju's IAS, right? It's a verified account. The moment you look at it, you get to know, okay, this is the official account. There might be several fake accounts, but this is the official account. So these are simple innovations. They also introduced the review process. The users could now raise complaint. Let's say you find an objectionable post which is promoting religious hatred against a community, right? Your friend has posted some radical post which is promoting hatred against another community. So you are objecting to it. How can you do it? You just have to go there, right? At the top, you'll find an option where you can report the post or the account. They'll give you an option as to why this post is objectionable to you. Is it hate speech? Is it promoting suicidal thought? Is it depicting brutal violence? Is it promoting explicit material, sexually explicit material? Such options are given to you. Or is it fake news? Is it spam? You can accordingly select and submit the report and you get an acknowledgement. And on the back end, they have a review team which will manually do the review, and they've also automated this by using AI tools. Because they might receive lakhs and millions of review complaints or review reports. They can't sit and go through everything manually. So there are AI tools which filter out these posts which are pushed for a review. And this is matched with their internal company standards. Every company has its internal community guidelines as to how a user has to behave. If any post violates their community standards, they will take down the post. They will warn the user as well. If they repeat it, their account will be blocked. Right? Those posts which are flagged by the AI tool is manually reviewed as well by a manual review team. And they try to ensure that highly objectionable posts are not put up on their platforms. They try to remove such posts and even ban such accounts. Right? So these are measures that companies also have taken to ensure that they are also involved in the fight against fake news, because they have the biggest responsibility. Right? Next is the issue of data localization. This is about storing data within Indian territory, within Indian jurisdiction. This has been another controversial, debatable topic. I'll come to this. I'll explain this as well. We'll discuss this in a short while. The government wants these companies to have offices in India, have data centers in India, and store Indian data within India. Because that is when our jurisdiction will apply on them. That is when our laws will apply. That's when our police, law enforcement, and courts can exercise jurisdiction over them and force them to obey the law of the land. Because otherwise, if data centers are located abroad, they will always give the excuse. They can say that we are not obliged to follow your laws because we are not even located in your country. So India has been pushing for data localization, meaning the data centers have to be located locally. If you're operating in India, if you're having Indian users, then have offices here in India and ensure your data center is here. The data should not leave India. So this has become a matter of sovereignty, data sovereignty as well. Governments are claiming data sovereignty. But this again is a controversial, debatable topic. I'll explain this. We'll come to that discussion later. So it's very important for social media companies to self-regulate, right? Through such technological innovations, through review options, where there's a manual review, where AI tools are used to filter out objectionable content. There's a very important need to self-regulate, and even the government has to bring out a regulatory policy. This is another option, right? Government can bring out a law and notify certain regulatory policies and rules which are mandatory for the companies to follow. If they violate the regulatory guidelines, they could be penalized, they could be punished. There is also a need for intelligence agencies to step up surveillance. This is another way of maintaining the sanity on social media. Our intelligence agencies, law enforcement agencies, they have to monitor social media and even the dark net to look out for any security threats. Right? Terrorists might be using Telegram to communicate. ISIS might be spreading its propaganda through Facebook. Right? There could be cyber criminals, organized criminals engaging in conversations. So it's very important to maintain surveillance. But again, this raises a controversy. What should be the extent of surveillance? What if surveillance power is misused by the government? What if it violates the basic rights of the citizen? Right? So all these conflicting issues come up when we discuss the regulation of social media. Regulation is the way forward, but how to regulate? What should be the regulatory policy? This leads to a conflict between the government, the social media companies, and the citizens, that is the users. Is that clear? It leads to a triangular contest, a triangular conflict with government on one side. The government has certain demands and concerns. We users and citizens, we have our own risks, our own demands and concerns. Then you have the social media firms on the other side. They have their own genuine concerns and their own demands. So this is the triangular conflict between the three entities, the three stakeholders involved with regard to social media regulation and data protection. All right. So this is the topic that I will discuss and explain in detail after the lunch break. It's already almost 1 o'clock. Let's take the lunch break from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Have your food, refresh yourselves. We'll come back at 2 p.m. and we will resume the discussion. Right? Once we talk about this, it becomes easy for you to understand the law which has been recently enacted. We'll talk about the rules we have in place to regulate all these platforms. So that will complete this chapter. All right, now let's look at some questions. Any doubts, any questions? And after that, we can proceed for the lunch break. Hemlata is asking meaning of mob lynching. Mob lynching is an incident where a group of people, basically a crowd, an angry crowd, that's a mob. If they attack a person, right? If they beat up the person, right? And the person gets injured or even gets killed, that is an example of mob lynching. Is that clear? There might be a valid reason or a innocent might have been beaten up. Doesn't matter, right? Both are, let's say there is a criminal, there is a terrorist. Mobs cannot take the law into their own hands. Angry crowds can't beat up people. Whether he's a criminal or not, doesn't matter. That is for the authorities to deal with. The police, law enforcement, they will deal with it. The law will take care of it. Even if it's a criminal, even if he's a terrorist, mobs have no right to beat up anyone. So if an angry crowd assembles and targets a person or a group of people and beat them up, right? That is what we call as mob lynching. All right. Saurabh has a very good suggestion. He says, sir, best way to understand this is to watch the Social Dilemma documentary on Netflix. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. I have seen this. It's a wonderful documentary. If you haven't, please go on Netflix, watch this docu-series called The Social Dilemma. It's a wonderfully made documentary. You'll understand the risks, the concerns, the threats associated with social media. Himanshu is asking, what will these gaming platforms which run Blue Whale Challenge, what will they get by forcing teenagers to commit suicide? They get nothing by it. It is just a pervert nature. It's a sadistic pleasure they get. Is that clear? It's just pure sadism and it's a pervert attitude. Many of the games were traced to Russia and some East European countries. It was some miscreants involved in cyber crimes who are doing it just for the fun of it. Is that clear? So that's what they get. They get nothing else. Okay. So guys, let's stop the discussion here. We'll come back at 2 p.m. and we'll continue the discussion. We'll try to close this chapter and then we'll take a look at cybersecurity. So please come back at 2 p.m.